From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. To hear details about all the applications of Ditto Transcripts and exactly why this is a key solution for your organization's workload issues, check out episode 232. We often talk about service and identity beyond the badge. Valor Technical Cleaning is a veteran-owned, nationwide biohazard remediation company hiring active and retired officers for business development roles. With Valor, you can build relationships with local agencies and continue to foster care for the community following tragedy. Continue serving, just in a new way. Visit valortechnicalcleaning.com and click Careers. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Hey everyone, welcome back. We talk about a lot of things here on the show, but one of the biggest themes that's been reemerging in presence is the concept of identity. We talk about these roles, these professions that we undertake, and identity can be super pervasive. It can be overinflated, certainly in the service type of roles that we're in, but also like this happens to people that I know in civilian life, like some of my closest friends, like how they identify with their career or their work. And so that's the entry point of this conversation. I'm really excited to bring in the star-studded cast, but truly like a lot of positive people that have been there, done that, and we're continuing to have been there, done that in whatever context that is, which is really what I'm excited about and bring in these different perspectives and viewpoints in the guest panel. First off, I'm going to kick it off with someone who has been on before, but that is, he hasn't heard the episode yet because it hasn't even aired, so this is kind of a little Inception time warp, but it will be episode, or when you're listening to this, it is a two-part interview, episodes 293 and 294, and that's LT David Smith. David, could you give us a little crash course of who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here in the, let's say, east side of Virginia. Police lieutenant, been on for 15 years. Did some time on SWAT. Currently on the peer support team as a supervisor. And I'm also kind of running the shame mission outside of the department as well. I've started my own coaching program with a company called Apogee. So the program's called Apogee Responders. And I'm also locally doing a free rucking group called Responders Ruck. So just, it's really kind of with the mission, like low barrier to entry. Like, hey, how can we just be in relationships with each other, trying to be the best version of ourselves every day and be there for each other when times are tough. So that's like the 30,000 foot view of what I'm doing for sure. But
I love it.
that about sums it up.
Yeah, thank you, David. And shout out to rucking. It's simple. Put weight in a pack, walk around with it. But it can be very challenging, but very scalable. So I love that.
And the walk and talk too. When you're with other first responders, it's really about the walk and talk. And hey, what are we talking about? How are we being intentional with that also?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to bring to the table.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Shout out to Walk and Talks. I just a college buddy, yesterday. We're talking about the weather and we're like, you know what? It's actually not raining, here in the Pacific Northwest. Let's just go. We went to a local park. We walked and just talked about life for an hour. So if you don't do that, consider it. It's fantastic. All right, Megan, let's turn it over to you. Could you please introduce yourself, say hello, tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks for having me, first of all. Just a brief I guess, bit about my background. I'm a former police officer. I did a couple of years at the local level with a department in Virginia, and then a couple years at the federal level at the Supreme Court. So I kind of got a little bit of both worlds. Worked in a long-term undercover assignment, worked in patrol, and then on the other side, worked a lot of court security and dignitary protection. So a decent mix of things there. I transitioned out of policing at 2021 and took a job, don't hold this against me, with the IACP, where I oversaw all of their officer safety and wellness projects. That role was eye-opening to say the least, but for me, it was a really nice transition from working in policing to kind of working on this side where I could actually support those still in the field and expand a little bit on my passion, which was bringing more, wellness services, awareness, action to everything that was lacking when I was on the job. Then about a year ago, I left that role and now have the luxury of working for a small family foundation called the Cummings Foundation for Behavioral Health, which I get the opportunity to work with agencies across the country where we fund their programming, we help implement their programming, we help evaluate their programming, really bring an array of kind of customized services to places that may not have the opportunity to find that funding or maybe don't have, the luxury of a whole wellness unit or anything like that yet. So I get to kind of go in and work directly with agencies now in implementing, comprehensive, well-rounded programming that's actually backed by what's working. So that's a little bit about my just professional background. And I really just, because of my own struggles when I was on the job and things that, I saw and dealt with and kind of the lack of support that I had, I've just really become an advocate for everybody still out there doing it and try to use my own story to help other people.
I love that. Yeah, and I see a lot of that, and that's why I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you, Megan. All right, we're turning over to Rich.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me. Like Dave, I'm here on the southeast corner of Virginia. I spent my career with the Norfolk Police Department in a variety of different roles. I started like everybody else on the street, working in some pretty heavy areas, and then transitioned over to violent crimes, where I was a gang unit detective for about 7 years, but was in and out of violent crimes, homicide back to the gang unit, and then finished up my time in the detective division as a cold case detective. Transitioned into admin services as a training instructor for the academy, put a couple academy classes through. Got promoted, got a degree in sociology, swore up and down I wasn't going to go back. Found myself in a master's program for human services counseling while trying to run our criminal intelligence unit during the 2016 election season and the first round of BLM protests in the country. So ended up getting the degree. Don't have a license because I just didn't have the 3,600 hours to give the state of Virginia. But found myself overseeing the peer support unit in 2018, and I think my actual progression into wellness started in 2016 as a peer. Been in the space about a decade now. I've seen the ebbs and flows. I've kind of seen where we're going, some of the barriers, and here lately. You can find me on the Respond to Reset podcast, where I talk openly about a lot of the barriers that we put up, not only individually, but organizationally and within the industry. That's the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Rich. And the listeners, it is probably pretty clear why this panel was assembled, but it actually wasn't because of your geographical location. Which is kind of boggling to me. I've been connected with each of you for a little bit, but wanting to connect on wellness for sure, but then identity being such a huge intersection with that. Going back to Meg, it's funny. I like a lot of what comes out from the IACP, and one thing in the conversation here, one thing I really like is that when I noticed this years and years ago, but it was just seeing like officer safety and wellness. and they said it all in the same thing, because technically, and people know the stats, like we harm ourselves and we take ourselves out more than suspects do, and that is a huge problem. So when we talk about tactics, we talk about officer safety, but then also like how you show up, like your mental clarity, your emotional stability, like that is the same conversation. So I love that, and I know that you all put out a lot of stuff in reference to that. One thing I really like that each of you kind of featured also is like you're trying to introduce this low entry point, whether it's content you put out, whether it's something like, you know, something as simple as rucking, but also, you know, Meg with the work she's doing in helping agencies with lower budgets, because that can be a constraint. So shout out there. So I'm going to open it up with just talking about like identity. And I know that a lot of first responder folks know why the identity can be so overwhelming, but I kind of just want to see what pops into your mind or what you want to start the conversation off with, because there are some people that listen in that are, I mean, they're before the career, they're really interested in these career paths. And so maybe I'll kick it off and turn it over back to David.
You know, when I think of identity, you know, the extent of identity training that we get in the academy is, hey, make sure you have friends outside the department, and that's it. And meanwhile, you're inundated with thin blue line this, thin blue line that, and you know, rightfully so. I think there is that brotherhood aspect, or what have you, that you kind of bond with your squad mates, that camaraderie. Yes, much needed, 100%. But then when you take that home, you're taking home everything else. So we can't forget about our identities that we already were before we started, and that evolve as we grow. You know, becoming a parent, or becoming a committed spouse, or what have you. You know, we have all these different identities that we show up as, and the job doesn't train you for any of that. It trains you to be part of the brotherhood, and to have everything that comes with that, the hypervigilance, the training as it's needed on the job. But then when you get home, you can't continue to operate that way. But we do, and then we find out the hard way how that affects everything at home. Or we operate like that until separation, whether that be retirement, whether that be involuntary separation, or what have you, whatever you have planned, an exit strategy. And then all of a sudden you don't have that identity piece anymore. We've That's when we realize that we've forgotten about everything else. And there's so many things to dive into in regards to that. But that's what first pops into my head when I think about the identity and kind of the damage the culture does, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So David, I believe are you 16, 17 years on?
15. Yep.
15. Okay. Yeah, I'm 18. It was very similar. And I feel like, you know, on the West Coast, pretty good, like bringing in new ideas about wellness. But back when I started, it was, yeah, live outside the blue world. And that was not the shortest talking point, but it wasn't the longest conversation either, right? Like do the things in Gil Martin, like be aware of the ustas that you used to do and you don't do anymore, and interact with people that aren't just cops. I'm curious what that was like for Meg and when you came on, and then also then we'll ask him what those conversations looked like when he started, if there were any at all.
Yeah. So for me, I started in 2014. And I would argue, yes, David, your point about the academy, like, of course, that was in there within my agency too, right? Like, make sure you maintain friends outside of the agency. That's super important. But I would also argue that even before that, like if we look at the very beginning, like the application process, you have this like mentality already shoved down your throat, right? That like if you're going to do this job, you're going to lose friends. You need to make your circle even smaller. The people that you associated with before maybe aren't going to be in your world anymore, right? So like that mentality, I feel like as you're even just applying or accepting the job is kind of already there, or at least it was for me. And then you start and you go through everything, David, you explained from the academy, and you have a little bit of that balance, right? But I think there's just so much placed on you're so different than everybody, right? Like you're doing this job because it's a calling or because it's noble, and you're running towards danger where other people are running away. And I think that that's an important balance to strike, like, right? Like, yes, people who do this job and who go into this career field are different. We are built a little bit differently than what the average person may be, or else people would be like beating down the door to do the job, right? Like that is definitely the case. But if you allow that to become everything that you are, then that's, I think, where we see this problem. And then where even more issues within the wellness realm fester, right? Because you're basically telling yourself, oh, I'm different, I'm not the same, or I'm broken, or I'm this. And that could be kind of attributed back to the whole identity piece. I think where the negative part comes in is not only the, I guess, you know, separation, right, or the focus on that identity piece, but because we have cared so much about this job and because it does become such a big piece of who you are, I think the point at which the culture turns its back on you when you feel like you've given everything to that identity, that's where things really start to break down. When that brotherhood that we call it, that sisterhood, whatever, is that piece that's kind of such a big part of that identity, and I've given so much to this, when that kind of flips the opposite way or doesn't actually show its true colors in being a brotherhood, I think that that's where it can really start to impact you negatively, outside of just some of the other things that we already talked about, like maintaining just being a human outside of the job.
Yeah, there's a lot there. It's like when you pour so much into something you love and you sweat and you bleed over it and it doesn't love you back. Like that leaves a gap and it builds into so many complicated things. Rich.
Yeah, I mean, I came coming on in 2000. I think we heard some of the same, get some friends outside, and that was about it. But there was really that indoctrination phase that Megan alluded to was, this is it. This is all you're going to have. Keep your circle tight. We're here for you until that first taste of organizational betrayal kind of sets in, right? And it can kind of get you to go a couple different ways. Easy to kind of fall into the cynicism of the workplace. And that's where I think a lot of identities are built. I think they're built within that cynicism, that us versus them mentality between the troops on the ground and the administration. A lot of people's identities are wrapped up in that. A lot of people's identities are wrapped up into this belief that this is the only thing that they can do in their life. Whether it be, I think we go through this weird phase, I'd say around 6-7 year mark, to where we have a major life event, whether we get married, whether we have children, and that can kind of get people to kind of put the thin blue line underwear that Dave was talking about away, tuck that away in the drawer, put the stickers away, and really kind of focus in on that identity, which is the identity we should be focusing on. Like at the end of the day, the job's the job. The job's never going to change. Some things, may be a little bit different from an aspect of policing now as to policing then. But at the end of the day, the job was the job. And if you fall into that mentality of that place is not going to live without me, you'll be very disappointed to find out that it keeps on moving.
Yeah. And that's something we talked about a lot here, which is like even the healthier agencies where there is more trust, there is more collaboration, like even if you're the hard charger that was also like the super well-liked person by admin and your peers and all that, like you're just that road dog, it has to move on. Like it doesn't have a choice. Like it's a machine, it's an organization, it doesn't have feelings. I think that the difference is recognizing like hopefully we're investing in relationships with humans, not just our partners. Like there's people that I've worked some crazy calls with and like we have a bond. I don't truly keep in touch with all of them. I think about them here and there, but then there's people that I work with or I used to work with, and I'm confident we're going to be friends for life just because of the relationship that we've built. And so I've heard people say that they're frustrated that they don't have, friendships and, all that from when they left or retired. And I hear it and I'm not trying to sound cold, but I'm like, what did you do to like water those plants and those relationships? I don't know if what your guys' thoughts are on that, or if anything kicks up for any of you. We have a couple former law enforcement, police, and David being current as well.
I think you made a good point, Eric, that definitely stands true for me because like, on one side, there's that mentality or the thought of, like, the second you're out the door, like, you're done, right? Like, you're never gonna hear from anyone again. All the people that you were, like, close with on shift, whatever, you're never gonna speak to them again because 'cause you're gone. And that is definitely the case, right? Like, there's a lot of guys that were my closest buddies on my shift or that I worked with every day, right? That I really haven't spoken to or haven't maintained a relationship with after leaving. Um, However, there are other people that I still have great relationships with that will be my friends for life. But I think that the difference is those people who I no longer talk to, our relationship was solely based on work, right? The people who I still maintain that connection with or still speak to, we had built a relationship that was not solely of like revolved around whatever call was going on, whatever was happening on shift that day. So I think you do make a point that you can still have that like outside of work relationship with someone who maybe is also on your shift or also a coworker, right? It's just a matter of like where you kind of put the focus on things. And I think that that can make a big difference. Like for people you were saying, they feel like, well, I don't really have this. It's like, well, there's different ways, I guess, of going about those relationships and maintaining them, whether it's, with work people or anyone. And then there's, some people in the middle that for me, like, there's a group of people that I was involved in a critical incident with, and every single year, still to this day, even 10 years later, we speak every year on the anniversary of it, just because it's one of those things that like will never leave you, right? And you're always going to have that connection with that person, even if it's not something that's like ongoing in your life. So I think even after leaving the job, like for me, that was definitely important, right? Because similar to Rich, obviously he did a lot more years than I did, but when you leave, you have that like a bit of identity crisis, and you've seen all these things, you've done all these things, and now you're just like a normal person out in the world, and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with myself now? So still kind of having that connection in some way, especially when it comes to some of those, more serious or tougher things that you dealt with, I think is helpful to still have that connection to people, even if it's not, a person that you've maintained, a day-to-day relationship with.
Yeah, you talk about that, like that group on a same critical incident, and it's that like trauma bond. And I love hearing that people connecting like positively over an anniversary, because a lot of times calls like that, you're like, man, I'm glad we were all together in the way that we were. There was that bad thing that happened or that terrible thing that happened, but we had each other, and where would we be if not for that? You train for the threats you can see, but what about the ones you can't? United Diagnostic Services brings hospital-grade diagnostic technology directly to first responder agencies, making early detection of cardiovascular disease and cancer more accessible than ever. UDS provides comprehensive early detection programs using advanced ultrasound, CT calcium scoring, stress echoes, and innovative blood panels to identify potential health risks long before symptoms appear. It's proactive, on-site, and built specifically for those who serve. Early detection saves lives and careers. Learn more at udshealth.com. Even with Rich being a street cop, working different assignments, being in wellness and peer support in the career, and then retiring, there's an us-them. Like, we get that there's an us-them with officers and admin. We get that. We also get that there's an us them with different facets, but at what point do we stop doing that, right? Like you did 5-10 years and you're out. It's like, well, you don't know anymore. It's like, what if you do 20-30 years? Oh, you're out, you don't know anymore. Well, what about David, who's 15 years in, but he's an LT, so he doesn't know anymore and he's active, right? And so we can keep making these discernments. And I know that it even happened with, well, you don't work the street patrol, right? You're in the gang unit. You guys get to do the fun stuff. You're not beholden to 911 and all that stuff. So like, I guess this is my call up or call out. Like, when are we going to stop that? Because we need to focus on the commonalities that we have as humans, as people that did the job or didn't do the job, and they're alongside, right? We have these advocates that are civilians, but they're in a different kind of trench alongside us a lot of times, like chaplains, clinicians. Like, they don't have to fully do the job. I think it does make a difference of like what type of peer support hat you put on or what type of advocacy support hat you put on. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on why is this and how do we work through and work past that?
To what we've mentioned already with the friendships and relationships, Um, and a lot of that happens organically, like, hey, we're on the job, what have you, and that's the connection, right? Well, if that's the only connection, then it's going to disappear when you drop off. And it does become like, okay, well, that connection was with the department, and now it's gone. Like, I've seen a lot of people separated from the job, and I had one tell me specifically, like, dude, no one reaches out to me. Like, there's zero contact with anybody. Like, well, all his connections were job related, you know? So if we are intentional about finding that commonality and friendships, you know, hey, what else are we connected through? You know, it like you said, Megan, it could be somebody that you're close with from the job, but there's something else that also needs to piece together that relationship. Whether that be parenthood or hobby or I think I think that's a huge key. And I know we both, Eric, follow Simon Sinek, and I know he's working on a friendship book. Um, and so I'm really excited to see where that goes. And I think it's uh, a theme that's starting to come up because it's important that we have these relationships, and that's how peer support starts. Peer support doesn't start when the tragedy happens; it starts when you have that relationship already, and that's how that person is able to go there without, you know, any fear. Like, go to that person because they already trust them; that relationship's already built. So I think that's a huge piece, but it is very much like a us versus them, like department for as a whole versus everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Eric. I think at the end of the day, we thrive in negative. We thrive in the chaos. We
Hmm.
love to talk shit about one another. We love to, kind of point the finger at everybody else as being the problem. We don't really celebrate the small wins. We just chalk it up to just doing the job or just out of the job or whatever it may be. And we are inherently joy thieves. We're the one uppers. We're the best at it. We will one up everybody in the room with a story or an experience, and we kind of basically just shit on other people's good work, and it makes to make us feel better.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, a lot of it has to do with ego, and if we're not able to check that ego at the door, we're not going to be able to actually do much of anything except for stay in this hamster wheel that we call wellness. We've got to put the titles away, and we got to put the alphabet soup away and work collectively, not only in the wellness field, but on the job within organizations. At the end of the day, just because you took a test, and Dave can probably attest to this, just because you took a test and you got promoted doesn't make you the smartest guy in the room. And if you act that way, you're not going to get much from the troops. So um, I think we just have to do a better job of being intentional with some positivity, intentional with productive thought patterns and
Mm.
productive feedback, just as much as the negative feedback that we like to give so much.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's almost personal accountability too, in a sense, right? Because we see this in wellness.
Hmm.
I've been seeing this since the day I started working in wellness, if you want to say that, right? I feel like
Hmm.
that's just a dumb thing to say, but that's is what it is. Oh, you were on the job. Okay, cool. Because if you weren't on the job, we definitely weren't going to listen to shit you had to say because you didn't get it. Oh, you were only on the job for 6 years. Well, I don't
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
You don't know enough, or so it's this, or even in Rich's case now. Oh, well, you're retired. It's like, what is the threshold here, people?
Right.
Right? Like, where are we drawing that line? So I think this also, like, full circle comes back to that identity piece, right? Especially for someone like Rich or myself who are still working alongside the people doing the job. Because for me, then, I feel like it's this constant need for justification, right? Of like, I have done the job. I have been through this. I have been through that, which is not what's important. I don't really give a shit what I did, quite frankly, anymore. I only care about it so that I can try to help whoever is still doing it. But I think that we live in this, like, it's like a double-edged sword because you gotta have done the job for anybody to listen to you, but then you also don't wanna just be, someone who's so consumed by identity of, "Well, back in my day," or, "When I was on the job, I did this," right? So it's like that balance of finding, um, how to navigate that. But I think for the pushback that you get, right? So Eric, for the pushback from people who are saying like, "Oh, well, you're this now or you're that now," those type of people are not willing to take that hard look in the mirror maybe, right? Or aren't willing to actually address the things that we're talking about in wellness. And maybe that's just like a little bit of a defense mechanism in a way of like, "Oh, well, you didn't do the job long enough, so you don't actually know what you're talking about." Okay, well, if that's what you want to decide, then I guess that's your choice. But until you're kind of willing to open up to see like what is really, you know what I mean, what's going on here, what I'm saying, what Rich is saying, what David's saying, regardless of what point of career we're in, regardless of how many years we did. So long, of course, as that person is honest and genuine, because we know that there's issues with that as well, but we'll set those people to a whole another category.
Hmm.
I just think that it's just you got to take some personal accountability to talk about stuff that's hard or uncomfortable and doesn't always have to be a negative thing that we're all used to. You don't always have to be the old crusty guy sitting in back of roll call shitting on everything. It just we're nobody's going to move forward that way.
All right, that was part 1 of this 2-part interview. Make sure to tune in next time to hear the rest of the tips and insight from our conversation. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.